All right, we're back for another Friday Financial Wrap-Up with Mr. Michael Zuber, and we're live. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. You did a great job, doing this on your own, doing it solo. So first, thank you for doing that. You didn't have to, but it was important enough for you to continue the streak. So I just wanted to let you know that I watched. I was fanboying over you when I was in Asia. So nice work.
Right on. Well, welcome back, man. Thank you for that. And this is for March the 21st, 2025. Let's get right into the show. Existing home sales. What happened this week and what was your take on it?
Well, the first thing if you watch my channel at all, I celebrate my wins and my victories when I get a prediction right, which means you got to celebrate when you're wrong. And I was wrong. I was fairly confident. In fact, I would have bet money that existing home sales came in for the month of February sub 4 million. And frankly, I thought it might even come in below what the experts said. And the experts were at 3.95. I don't know that I would have bet a lot of money below that, but I would have bet a lot of money sub 4. And they came in at now you got to remember, these are seasonally adjusted numbers, but nonetheless, I'm not going to cop out. I was wrong. They came in at 4.26 million, which is, if you're wondering, not below 4 million. So I have spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I was so wrong, because I believe that one of the reasons, my batting average on predictions is better than most is I've taken the time to learn when I was wrong, right? Because there's more opportunities to learn. So I think there was two things. Having, kind of dug into the spectacular miss. It was a big miss. I was way wrong. Two things. One, the only segment that is growing is above 750K.
Yep.
Right? Which means we still have a very, very broken housing market, right? If the low end is not transacting, not only do you not really have first-time home buyers, but the move-up buyer is just gone, right? They're just not there. So that's interesting, because again, when you're buying a home over 750 grand, you're not as tight. So that's interesting. And then the second thing, and this was my big error. This last one was my big error. This was closings in February. Closings.
Correct.
So this. Frankly, I should have known this. I do know it, but I forgot. A closing in February means it went pending late December or January.
Yep.
And what do we remember about late December and January? There was what was called the Trump bump.
Yep.
Right? There were literally people waiting on the sidelines to see who won the election. And when they did, we had that little 4 to 5, maybe 6 week window where activity kind of jumped.
Yep.
Now, those were pendings, but now they're closed. So I screwed up. I forgot the time lag, because I still don't think the housing market is healthy. In fact, we'll talk about this later. I think it's slower than normal. But again, for a guy who called sub 4 million, to forget the Trump bump that occurred in activity in late December and January is frankly unacceptable. So shame on me. I should have known better.
I think you're being hard on yourself, overplaying too. I think in the end, I think you're spot on. I think the carry of you got the post-election bump, and then it ran, and then of course you had the inauguration, you had executive orders, which we'll talk about, and what's going on today. It's a lagging indicator, but I think, again, I don't think you missed.
No,
the numbers off.
Yeah,
the numbers off, but I think the trend of what's going to happen this year, and I think we'll see. Time will tell.
Oh, yeah.
The next couple of months play out.
I am not. Let's be clear. I mean, to your point, just because I was wrong in February does not mean I'll be wrong all year, right? I'm still calling my sub 4 million. But again,
and I'm with you.
I look at this going, Zuber, you freaking idiot. You talk to 3 or 4 agents every week, and they all told you that the Trump bump was real.
Yep.
You should have known that stuff goes pending. And then 4, 5, 6 weeks later, they're closings. I should have known that. And I should have said, shit, February is going to be better than people expect because of that. But I didn't put it together. I will next time.
I'm going to comment as we come around the turn. So I've got some insights about February, March, what it looks like. Let's keep going, though. Let's talk about the Fed decision yesterday. What was your take on it?
Yeah, the Fed decision, again, is a big nothing burger. They held tight. I think the dot plot really told the story. And unfortunately, stagflation is becoming a real concern that we might want to start preparing for. What do I mean? So there's really 4 things that the dot plot talks about. First is rates. Now, on the surface, the Fed still expects 2 rate cuts this year on the surface, right? When you average it all out. And again, I expected them to move that to 1. It almost went to 1, but didn't. But what we did see is we went from having 1 or 2 Fed presidents think we will have 0 or 1 rate increases. We are now at 8.
Yeah.
And the reason it stayed at 2 is because 8's not the majority. We've got to go 9 plus. That would have pulled it lower. They were just below that. So again, we went from having 2 presidents, 1 saying 0, 1 saying 1, to now 8 presidents saying 0 or 1. So that's the first thing. We've got to realize that the Fed is slow walking us to what I believe, and I called in November, 0 rate cuts in 25.
Interesting.
So that's 1. Second, growth. They, frankly, dramatically lowered 2025 GDP. They didn't take it negative. I'm not saying negative. I'm just saying they lowered it. Third, inflation. Same deal, other side. They dramatically raised PCE core inflation.
Yep.
And then lastly, unemployment. They raised their unemployment. But if you say lower GDP, higher inflation, that's stagflation.
Yeah.
So, you would never catch, I don't think you would catch a Fed president saying we're headed for stagflation, because it's the boogeyman. It's like the worst possible outcome for them. Makes their job impossible. You've got to pick between 2 horrible outcomes. But at least a guy who's been studying economics for almost, 30 years now. Wow, it's been a long time. You can't look at that dot plot and not scream stagflation.
Very interesting times, and it was interesting. I did watch pieces of Jerome Powell live on CNBC. And then all week, people are talking about that savings are actually up. The consumer's slowing down, but spot on what Jerome Powell said, point blank, was that the economy overall was healthy. And interesting.
We have one of these unique situations where actual activity is not yet matching future expectations.
Yeah.
Right. You could, like, for example, all of you listening to this, you could say something like, I want to go on a diet, or I want to lose weight, or I want to get healthy, right? You could say that that's your 1 year, your 3 year, your 5 year plan. You could say those things and then turn around and go get a mocha frappuccino and 3 cheeseburgers and some chili fries, right? So your actual activity may not match your intentions.
Right.
And we may be having some of that now, but let me be very clear. I think that's turning around. To take that example forward, I think there are a lot of people going on a diet. I think there are a lot of consumers putting their wallets away. I think if you're in the car industry, you're feeling it. You're in the furniture industry, you're feeling it. I think if you're in a business who sells supplies and capital goods, you're feeling it. I think a lot of this chaos, and you actually said this pre-roll, so I want to make sure you get 100% credit for this. The press, the media, has done a successful job of spinning up fear and concern. And dude, it feels really slow out there.
It does indeed. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of friends in different industries, auto industry, other industries, and it's definitely been slow. It is interesting. Let's keep going. Let's talk about Powell versus Trump.
Yeah.
Give me your spin on that.
So So Trump clearly wants lower rates. There's no secret there. It's no secret that Trump, I mean, he said it after the Fed meeting. Maybe it was the next day. I forget. Might have been late that night or the next morning, basically saying Powell needs to cut to help America transition to tariffs, right? Which are coming April 2nd, Liberation Day. He said all those things. Powell, Powell in front of the microphone when he was answering questions, he said, and I might get the quote slightly off, but the meaning will be there. Tariffs slow growth and raise prices. So again, I think Powell is making his feelings known, and Trump is never shy with his feelings, and it's going to be interesting. It is interesting because everybody that watches this channel knows that the Fed has actually cut rates 4 times already. They have. Yeah. They've cut it 4 times. Yep. But rates are up roughly, I don't know, I think 90 basis points now. It is interesting once again to realize that rates went down even though the Fed did nothing. Rates went down 6 basis points in 24 hours without the Fed cutting. So again, we have to watch the 10-year. The 10-year will drive mortgage rates. It'll drive credit card rates. It's not the Fed per se, because again, the Fed could cut, but it could send rates higher like last time, like the time before. So, some of this is posture for the media. Trump wants a boogeyman, and Powell's that guy.
Very interesting times. Continuing to move forward, retail sales this week. What was your take on it?
Yeah, retail sales is probably let me think about this for a minute. Yeah, probably the most important macro report for the next 90 days. So for the next 3 months. Why do I say that? Well, we talked about it earlier on this broadcast, that I think and I feel, and you have buddies in the industry, that the consumer is sitting on their credit card, right? They're not playing. We're going to see some of that in earnings reports, like Nike just had a disaster report and talked about collapse. But we're going to see it at the aggregate inside retail sales. So this week, what happened? Retail sales did grow slightly from memory. I think they were up 0.2. They were expected to be up 0.9. Last month was revised lower at negative 1.5. So again, not good, not negative, not horrible like January, but pretty bad. And again, I think I'm calling it right now. I hadn't thought about this before, but I think retail sales for the next 3 months is the singular most important macroeconomic thing, because again, we are an economy driven by the consumer. Roughly 65% of GDP is we drive. So if we put if we sit on our wallets and don't go out, there you go. I mean, for an example, retail sales this month showed that in the last 90 days, we consumers have gone to bars and restaurants 8.9% less. So if you're going to the restaurant 2-3 times less a month, you're not feeling very good. You're being cautious.
Yeah.
So yeah, retail sales.
Very interesting times. I want to throw just a slight twist in here, and that government spending, in terms of that, seems to be the huge headline for the last 6 weeks or last 4 or 5 weeks. How much is government spend? Is it 20% of GDP, or what's 25%?
I'm going to go from memory here, but I think government spending is something like low double digits, like 11 to 13%, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because we are clearly seeing the motivation. So let's just step back. For the last 2 years, whether you like it or not, the positive growth story we've had has been 100% government driven. 100%. Now, you can argue whether that's good or bad. I'm not going to get into that political nonsense. But we were on a path that was unsustainable.
Yep.
And, I don't think I've done this before, but I want to recommend all of you watch the All In podcast with Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick, especially Howard Lutnick. I just watched that yesterday, and oh my God, I get it now. I get what's going on. But yeah, dude, we were on an unsustainable path, and if we don't get government spending just down to trend, we've seen this huge run. It ends very, very badly. So that's what the administration and Doge and all those folks are clearly trying to do, is get government spending in line.
Very interesting times. Let's talk about home builder confidence. What was your take this week?
You're probably not shocked, but it went down. It continued to crash, continued to go lower. I don't know how it couldn't, right? You got to remember, home builders, obviously you have the rate environment. You have which we've had for a while. But now we have a scared consumer, right? They're seeing less people show up at their houses. And oh, by the way, they have tariffs.
Yeah.
Tariffs for a home builder are estimated to be on the low end. The lowest number I've seen for a home builder is $7,500 per home. And the highest I've seen is 11 grand. So let's call it 9 grand just to split the difference. They're staring at a $9,000 increase or $9,000 less profit. Because I highly doubt they can pass on all 9 grand without eating margin, right? The consumer is just not there. And oh, by the way, Lennar, kind of one of those middle of the road home builders, just reported yesterday. It's not in the show notes, but their margin is the lowest it's been in the last decade. It came in under 19%. Why? Pace over profit.
Yeah.
They're eating margin. They're buying down rates to move product. And if they have to eat that tariff, the 9 grand in this example, shoot, that's not going to feel good. Yeah. So
is it even realistic that they can't eat they've got to,
I don't know.
Right?
Well, do they have to? Mathematically, no, they don't have to. But, having run businesses and owned budgets before, it's not practical for them to eat all 9 grand. It's just not.
Yeah. No.
They might eat half. Mathematically they could, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah. Their margins are not gigantic, right?
Again, Lennar's margin
pace
18.9. That was their lowest on record. So if you take an average home sale of 400 grand and you have an 18% gross margin, yeah, of course you can eat that, but it's, because that's what, $60,000 or whatever profit per home.
Yeah.
So they could, they could, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah, it doesn't. Okay. Well, time will tell. A lot going on. And it's something too that we've probably said this, if you go back and watch from January to today, uncertainty, opportunity. Let's talk about, do you want to talk about school Sunday?
Yeah. One of the things I'm doing, because I haven't done in a while because I was focused on the event, then post event, and then I was gone for nearly 3 weeks, is I haven't done a live session inside school. So 8 a.m. Sunday, I'm going to be going live inside my school community, one rental at a time. And just like always, open Q&A, real estate, economy, travel, family, health. We got a lot going on. I'm an open book. I look forward to, my community coming together and asking me lots of questions. It will be recorded. I will post it inside school. So yeah, I look forward to getting back to doing lives. I haven't done one in a couple of months given my hectic schedule, but yeah, next one Sunday, 8 a.m. Pacific.
I love it. So school community, obviously a lot of you are members. A lot of you are members. There's probably a few of you. If you've not taken a look at it, it's $20 a month. Absolute crazy value. This is a high value piece. Get yourself involved in school. Go to school, onerentalatatime.com. You can find it. They can find the link.
I'll put it below.
It'll be in the show notes. It's kind of wild, Michael. And while you were gone, I took a deep look. I was looking at the 53-year spreadsheet. Again, it feels a lot like the mid-90s. And I want to connect the dots here. We've got Doge in 2025. Mm-hmm. Well, in the 1990s, we had where they shut down a lot of military bases. Kind of a similar thing, jobs, massive jobs left California, left the San Francisco Bay Area. I know in my hometown, Vallejo, California, we lost our naval base. You know, you had Treasure Island. You had a lot of that happening all over the country.
Yeah.
What is your take? Do you see this like a 1990s, like a pattern? What's your take on off the 53-year spreadsheet, the rates, where we're at? What is your take?
You know, I had never thought of it that way. But if you look at what's going on in Washington, D.C., it does have some very striking similarities to when the West Coast lost a lot of their military base. And in the 90s, we probably lost them elsewhere. Forgive me. I don't know where they were, but I know about Vallejo and Treasure Island, and San Diego was decimated, right? Southern California, I think they lost multiple bases. And why is that important? Because again, that triggered a localized housing, I don't know, pain / opportunity, depending on which side of the fence you're on. So I think in Washington, D.C. and their surrounding areas, you're going to see opportunity, right? And by opportunity means disrespectful offers. And, you know, there's going to be people that have to sell versus want to sell. And, you know, that's why we're still doing 4 million sales, because life happens and sometimes you have to sell. It's not a want, it's a need. So, yeah, I suspect the East Coast will feel this a lot because of Doge. I mean, I hear things. I have no idea if they're true. 50% of FHA and Department of Education. I have no idea if these things are true or not. But if they're even close to being true, even the rumor of them being true is enough to change consumer behavior. And should they actually happen, you're going to see a lot of it. Won't see. Here's the problem. A lot of the doomers don't understand time lag. What do I mean by that? Let's just say Department of Education and the IRS. I'm just trying to think of departments, right? Whatever they are, there's 50% less of them. What happens? Well, demand turns off in an instant. An instant demand turns off. But supply doesn't turn on for weeks and months.
Yeah.
Right? You don't get a layoff notice and put a for sale sign in the ground tomorrow.
Right.
Right? You take weeks to decompress. You get your resume ready. You do this, you do that. And then in a month or in 6 weeks or in 8 weeks, you list your home. So we're in the moment, at least in the DC area, where demand is turning off in an instant. Supply will show up.
Yeah.
It's just in a month, in 6 weeks, in 8 weeks, in my opinion.
Yeah. And just again, this is when I started in the 90s, and from recollection, it wasn't just falling off a cliff, but over about a 3-year period, it was like 25, 30% drop. And it was, 6-8% one year, 10% another year in terms of decline. So
exactly.
Very, very interesting times. Let me finish also with the spring market. What is your take? I posted something off of CNBC. John Burns, very respected economist, real estate specific, 50% survey. 50% slowdown on the spring market. Actually, yesterday was the first day of spring. What can we expect in the spring market starting this weekend?
No, I mean, I wish I could give you good news. I think it's going to be horrible. And I think that the John Burns real estate consulting guys, follow them on X or Twitter. They're a great follow if you have any interest in real estate. He's the real deal. Rick Police Jr., somebody I've had on the channel, he's the real deal. But what they're saying is 50% plus of the brokers and agents they surveyed are saying the spring selling season is slower than expected. This is what I'm calling for. I'm calling for sub 4 million. Now, again, I was wrong about February because I forgot about the time lag, but it is not good out there. The media has successfully scared people, right or wrong. It's just really confusing. And I want to go back to probably our first weekly talk of the year. I said the next 90 days, next 3 to 6 months were going to be messy.
Yep.
Good. Congratulations. we're there. We are in the soup.
It is messy.
It is messy.
Yeah.
But you know what? The other good thing, Ty, is we're halfway through it.
Yeah.
We're halfway.
Yeah.
Right. I think by June or July, things will become clear. Now, they could become clear that we are in a nasty, deep, dark recession, but at least we'll know. Or it'll come out and say, you know what? This tariff noise and nonsense turned out to be just, a couple of small things that really don't move the needle. We have better, who knows where this thing goes, right? We're in the middle of the soup. I warned you that 6 months was going to be chaotic. We're going to get President Trump sending out crazy tweets and things at midnight or whenever the heck he does these things. And it's going to just create a chaos. And I warned you. We have to remember that. And we're in it. But again, we're halfway through it. So that has to give you some comfort.
Let's finish strong. Opportunity. Where's the opportunity, Michael? In the chaos, in uncertainty, there's got to be a lot of opportunity. Unpack it.
That's exactly right. I said this on a Ryan Pineda podcast recently, that the only people that win 2025 are real estate investors who do the work.
Yes.
It's the only people that win. We don't care about a house emotionally. We care about numbers. And I guarantee you there are going to be more and more people who have to sell. I also guarantee you there are going to be more and more people who don't want to buy. So rising supply of motivated sellers, lowering of demand means we, the investors, are going to have a unique window, call it 6 months, call it 9 months, call it the rest of 2025, to write disrespectful offers, to create great deals, to get seller financing, to do the 50-40-10 with Velocity Mortgage. And I'm excited. And I'll throw this in there now. There's also a lot of noise about FHA. And, I think there's like 1 million people who haven't made a payment or made very little payments on their FHA mortgage. Yeah. That nonsense has got to stop, right? Yeah. That stuff's got to show up as foreclosures and short sales. Again, opportunity.
Big time.
So if I was in your business or Adrian or Omar or Jason Pritchard, any of these guys, I would be ramping up. I hope they hear me. I would be ramping up my NOD, because let's be clear, for the last 5 years, you ain't done an NOD search to save your life, because that just wasn't where the opportunities are.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's coming, right?
It's here.
It's coming. Yeah. Now's the time to lay the groundwork, because it is mind-boggling that the Biden administration, this is when it was put into effect. It's not a political statement. It's a factual statement. When Biden's administration put into effect these safety nets for FHA, where you would take these missing payments and put them on the back of the loan, and they just kept renewing them.
Yeah.
Dude, that stuff is junk and garbage and has got to be flushed down the toilet. So that's going to be opportunity. So if I was in the business of sending mailers, if I was in the business of really wanting to go hard at the beginning, I would start researching and skilling up on short sales and foreclosures, because I think NODs around FHA properties just mathematically have to go up, and I'd want to go get a piece of that.
100%, folks. The opportunity is here. All of my coaching clients, this is what we've been talking about, for the last 6-8 weeks. Pre-foreclosures, notice of defaults, notice of trustee sales. So spot on, Michael. Thank you for all that you do. Folks, get yourself involved with the school community. It's $20. Take it for a test drive. I guarantee you're going to love it. I'll look forward to seeing you Sunday on the Q&A at 8 a.m. Thank you, Michael.
You got it, buddy. Take care.